And would you join me in prayer, please? Sovereign Lord, instruct my tongue that I may know the word that sustains the weary. Waken our ears to listen to your teaching. Speak, Lord, for your servants are listening. Amen. Do you want to know what heaven looks like? Well, look around you. This is it. At least, this is supposed to be what heaven looks like. We're on the last of the 6 great ends of the church, the 6 purposes for the church, the reasons why we have a church. And the last one is, we have church to exhibit the kingdom of heaven to the world. If anyone wants to know what heaven is like, they should be able to look at the church and see it. The life of the church is meant to be a sample of what life is going to be in heaven. It doesn't always happen that way, though, does it? Maybe that's why the church seems to be in decline across the nation. Maybe we're not living up to what we're supposed to be doing. Perhaps we're failing to live up to our purpose. We're failing to be the church that we're called to be. Maybe we're not actually showing what the kingdom of heaven looks like. Now, this great end of the church is different from the first 5 we looked at. The first 5 great ends of the church, the first 5 purposes of the church, were things that we do. We proclaim the gospel. We provide shelter and nurture and fellowship. We maintain divine worship. We preserve the truth. We promote social righteousness. See, these are all things that we do. But this last one is different. This is something that we are. And we can only exhibit the kingdom of heaven to the world if we are the kingdom of heaven. Now, the sermons and devotions I'll be offering through the season of Lent will help us understand a little bit more about what the kingdom of heaven actually is. But we can't show something that we're not. Is this what people see when they look at the church? Do people see the kingdom of heaven when they look at church? It's popular these days to be against organized religion. And for good reason, because the church has perpetrated a lot of awful things. Church is responsible for things like the Crusades that killed how many thousands of people. Church often supports anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish behavior. And then, of course, there's the clergy abuse scandals we hear so much about. But then even in local churches, we can dissolve into petty gossip and bickering and judgmentalism so easily. Churches divide and disagree so quickly. So if the church is meant to display the kingdom of heaven, and this is what they see, then either heaven ain't so grand, or we're not doing a very good job of it. When people look at us, do they see God's kingdom? Well, that's a trick question, because when people look at us, they see a bunch of people. We are people with all the same warts and flaws and problems and idiosyncrasies as everyone else. But as long as people only see the people of the church, they're not really seeing the church. In other words, as long as we're only showing the people of the church to the world, we're not showing the church at all. Because the church is Christ, and Christ's kingdom at work in us and through us and by us, and yes, even in spite of us. The only way we can exhibit Christ's kingdom is if Christ himself is visible through us. As long as people are looking at us, they're not going to be able to see the Christ in us. Or as John the Baptist put it once, he must become greater and I must become less. So, how do we exhibit the kingdom of heaven to the world? In the passage I read from Matthew, Jesus offers 2 metaphors. The first one is salt. He says, we are the salt of the earth. Well, then let's think about it. What does it mean for the church to be salt? I was thinking about some of the ways that we use salt. Of course, we use salt to enhance the flavor of our food, right? Salt makes everything taste better. And if you don't think that's true, ask someone who's on a health-hearty diet and how much they wish they could sprinkle some on their food. Salt is supposed to make things better. That's what church is supposed to do. We are supposed to make things better around us. We're supposed to make our community better. We're to make our neighborhoods better. If we're students, our classrooms. If we work, our workplace. We're to make our families better. That's what church does when we're like salt. Another way we use salt is we put out salt blocks for horses and deer and other livestock, because we need salt. Salt is a necessity for life. Now, we don't have to worry about that quite so much with our modern American diets today, because you just eat one Big Mac and you've got enough salt for the entire week. But earlier in history, salt was a source of life. You needed salt to live. The church also offers a source of life to the world, our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. How well are we sharing that life? Sometimes we use salt as a conditioner. If you have hard water, you can use salt to remove impurities. You can get rid of unhealthy or distasteful elements. Well, there's a lot of unhealthy, distasteful things in the world today. And our role as salt is to neutralize that. Our role as salt is to clean it out and to say, this is wrong. Here's something better. Sometimes we use salt to heal. We might gargle with salt if we have a sore throat. We might use salt to clean an infection. We use salt to heal. We use salt to heal our wounds. There's a lot of wounded people in the world today, and their wounds run deep. Church is meant to be a place of healing for hurting people. One more use of salt. They used to use salt as a preservative. You'd salt the fish to protect it from spoiling. So salt is a protection. Salt is a preservative. If we are salt, we are also to protect and preserve, especially those who are under attack, those who are threatened, those who need a place of safety and refuge. By the way, we talked about the church saving and protecting and preserving in a couple of the other great ends of the church. We talked about preserving the truth and maintaining divine worship, keeping things going that are worth going. Now, Jesus also offered a warning when he said that we're like salt. He said, make sure you remain salt. Don't lose your saltiness. Don't lose your savor, because if you do, you're going to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. So, how can salt lose its saltiness? There's a couple of theories. The first one is, back in the ancient days, salt had a lot of impurities in it. So if you were using salt and the salt ended up getting leached out, all you had left were those impurities that were left. And that wasn't worth anything, so they just threw it out into the street. So if this is what Jesus meant, then we have to ask, how pure are we? Do the gospel and do Jesus Christ shine through us? Because a church without Jesus Christ, well, that's worth nothing more than what you throw underfoot. But there's a second way of understanding this when Jesus said, don't let your salt lose its saltiness. It is impossible for salt to lose its saltiness. That's like saying, I have water that isn't wet. To say I have salt that isn't salty. If it's possible for you to lose your saltiness, then that means you were never really salt in the first place. Your saltiness is just part of who you are. This is what makes you who you are. A church without the gospel, well, that's a contradiction in terms. It's an oxymoron, like saying cruel kindness or cold heat or dark sunshine. It just is who we are, and you can't lose it. Okay, well, speaking of dark sunshine, that's the second metaphor that Jesus offered. He said that we are the light of the world. So let's think about this one. What does it mean for the church to be light? Light is something we need for life. I mean, if it wasn't for the sunlight, the plants wouldn't grow, and without the plants growing, we won't have anything to eat. But what else does light do? Light can illuminate the way in darkness. You can see the path in front of you with light. So if we are the light of the world, that means we are exhibiting the kingdom of heaven to the world, which is what we're talking about this whole time. We are showing people the path toward God and his love. That is what it means for us to be light. We can use light as another reason, too. Lighthouses are reference points for ships out at sea. If they're lost or they want to make sure they don't crash into the rocks, They can find where the lighthouse is, and then they'll know where they are, their position. Can people find where they are in life by looking to the church as a reference point? That's only possible, by the way, if we are steady and consistent. A lighthouse that moves from day to day, that's not worth anything, because then the church, that doesn't help the ships know where they're going. A church needs to be a constant, steady light to help people know this is the way to go. One more use of light that we have. We can use light to reveal things. Sometimes what it reveals is what you're looking for, or a wonderful surprise. We are light when we show the grace and love of God to the world. But there's other times when we use light, and light shows us things that we don't want to see. You know, like those dark cobwebs in the corner you'd rather not have. There are things in our lives that we'd rather not have, and it'd just be easier to pretend they're not there, right? But if we are the light of the world, that means we also have the uncomfortable task of pointing out sin and injustice and immorality within ourselves, of course, but also for others to see this is wrong. We need to go to what is right. And again, Jesus gives a caution. He says that light cannot be hidden. Notice that isn't a warning, it's not a command, it's simply an observation. Jesus didn't say, don't hide your light. He said, light doesn't get hidden. You can't hide light. So if you have light, if you are light, it's going to show, whether you try to show it or not. The purpose for salt and the purpose for light is the same thing as the purpose of the church. We let our light shine, we show our saltiness so that people can see our good deeds. And why do we want them to see our good deeds? Is it to bring glory to ourselves? No. Let them see our good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven. The whole reason why we're doing this is not for people to look at us and say, well, isn't that a bunch of nice people at Old Union? Isn't Old Union a great church? If that's what people say, we might as well just pack up and close up shop. Our job is when people see us as individuals and as a church and what we're doing, the purpose is to see and say, wow, what an amazing God they're pointing toward. We are the church when we say, here is Jesus. We are the church, we're the church especially when we don't even have to say the words, here is Jesus, but when Jesus is evident in who we are. We are light. We are salt. So let's show the world what the kingdom of heaven is all about. Would you pray with me, please? Lord God, we cannot be salt and light without you at work within us. So fill us with your power, fill us with your Spirit, so that we may be true to the call that you've given to us. Amen.